So, we carry on with these very interesting speeches. They are interesting, right?
Yes.
Very interesting. Very hard to cut off. So I have a very difficult task, but I hope you will bear with me. The next one is Michel Reilhac, independent interactive story architect. That's very nice. I read this on the program. Michel, I met Michel a few years ago at the Biennale Cinema College, and it is really a pleasure and an honor to be able to work with him. I mean, the knowledge Michel has of cinema, of film, is incredible. But not only, the way he works with young talents is amazing. So I'm really happy to be able to present you here. And you'll tell us a little bit about what you do, right? Hey?
Okay. If you want me to, yes, I can.
And the title of the speech is Virtual Reality an Option for Filmmakers? Which is the new thing that you're leading us into, right?
Right, and the answer is yes.
Good.
So it's easy. There's no suspense. Yes, I do. I specialize now in VR films, and I'm very excited because the last film I did is going to be in competition at Sundance. So I'm very pleased. I just learned that. Please don't say anything about this because it's not yet public. But I'm excited, and the reason why I'm excited is the reason why I'm here trying to share it with you. And it's interesting that, Nicola, you talked about reality in very different ways, but I just wanted to open by talking about the notion of reality, because it has indeed become a much more complex and multi-layered concept than it used to be. When we talked about reality up until very recently, we meant real reality. But now we have to sort of emphasize that when we talk about the physical world, we talk about real reality, because there are three other levels of reality that we talk about in digital media. The second one is augmented reality, and that's what we talk about. When we talk about augmented reality, we talk about this new way of adding a digital layer over the physical reality, over real reality, by using devices such as our tablets, such as our mobile phones. And this is something that is mostly used for marketing purposes right now, but it's going to evolve and become more and more complex. It's already moving into this field that we called mixed reality, which is yet again another level of reality, and some of it is best represented by HoloLens, which is the new device that Microsoft is working on. Can we have the sound up?
We use it in every aspect of our lives.
Can we have the sound up?
It enables us to do amazing things.
This is the a trailer to represent what
if we could go
HoloLens will be.
Where your digital world is blended with your real world. Now we can. This is the world with holograms. What will they enable us to do?
Okay, sound is low. So the idea of mixed reality is what we used to call holograms, where we will be able, through goggles, glasses, to actually work in real reality with digital objects in 3D. This is obviously a fantasized representation. It will never be that smooth. It will never be that fluid and easy. It never works that well in the real world. But it gives us an idea of what we are aiming for.
Tighten here and here.
We can't have more sound? It's maximum. Okay, I'll go on. But what I wanted to talk about is virtual reality, and why is it something so big? I take for granted that you all know what virtual reality is. We talk about virtual reality when we are watching a world in 360 degrees within which we are fully immersed. This is an example of the adaptation of virtual reality in 360-degree videos. So you have these thing where you just click on and you can just navigate the 360 bubble inside which you find yourself.
The Arctic is ground zero for the dramatic climate changes happening all over the planet.
Here? Yes, thank you. I didn't do that.
These are the Berry, Cox, and Cascade glaciers. 100 years ago, all three glaciers converged at this very point, bridged by ice hundreds of feet deep.
So you've probably seen it, but when we talk of virtual reality, what we really want to talk
Inside
about
a picturesque ice
is
cave
the
deep within
immersive dimension of the experience. And I'd like to just say a few words. Why is it so compelling, and why is it an option for filmmakers today? And there are three main reasons that make virtual reality a completely different experience from cinema. The first one is immersion. When you find yourself inside a sphere which represents the world in 360 degrees around you, you are no longer a spectator of it, you are a part of it. You are part of the experience. You're no longer watching something, you are in that something. You are in the middle of it. And you really need to experience it to understand how powerful that experience is. The immersive nature of the experience has a direct consequence, is the sense of presence. If I'm immersed, if I'm no longer a spectator watching, and that I'm a part of the experience, I am present within this experience. If I'm in a field of war, for instance, I no longer am protected from what I watch. I'm in it. I'm a part of it. And that sense of presence in itself has a third consequence, which is empathy. And this is probably the most powerful effect of the virtual reality experience, is when you start, because you're immersed and you're present, you start feeling for the people around you that you are immersed in and that you're present with. This power of empathy makes the experience of virtual reality radically different and much more involving from the experience of cinema. One of the reasons why the experience of virtual reality is so different from cinema has to do with how the brain works. When we are here in a theater and we're watching a screen, our brain it makes a difference between what it sees, what it perceives through mostly sight and sound on the screen from what is around. There's a hierarchy. We know that the reality that we perceive is this room, is this theater, or our living room if we're watching our phone or if we're watching our tablet. Our imagination can escape through the window of the screen. We can cry, we can laugh, and we can have incredible emotions through the film. But somewhere in our brain knows that this is not for real. This is fake, it's fiction, it's imagination. In virtual reality, it's very different. Our brain does not receive any other signals than those that are sent by the virtual reality content, by the story. Therefore, it doesn't have anything to compare it with, and there's no hierarchy any longer between the real world and the imaginary world of what is perceived. Therefore, our brain takes for granted that what it sees and what it hears is the world, is reality. This is why it works through presence and empathy. And this is also why virtual reality is truly a change in paradigm. It's not a technological upgrade. It's not like color or sound in its time. It's not like 3D a few years ago. It's a complete change of experience. And this is why it's going to become so incredibly powerful starting now. So how does that work, and how can a filmmaker, a film producer approach it? We have to bear in mind that we are at the very, very beginning of the process. The state of the art right now in virtual reality is really the equivalent of what happened at the end of the 19th century with the Lumiere brothers and the first screenings. So the goggles that we use, the headsets, the technology is still very primitive, yet our expectations are very high because we've been used through mostly Hollywood movies and the digital culture to expect something very fancy, very slick, very clean, and that works really, really well. There will be, as virtual reality starts hitting the market with the Christmas season now, there will be a big wave of disappointment because people will say, oh, but it's pixelized, I can see stitches, and the color's not great, and I don't feel so immersed. And yes, because it is still in its infancy, in its technological infancy, and we expect everything to be slick, clean, wonderful right away, and it won't be. So there will be a disappointing phase before the technology catches up and it becomes very slick. When you look at when you Google rigs and cameras in virtual reality on Facebook, on Google, this is what you see. These are the systems, the cameras that you can use to film a film in virtual reality. It can go from very fancy rigs with 20 and over cameras to 14 cameras. My last film was shot with this rig with 14 GoPros, Hero Black 4. The cost for a full rig of this kind is around 10,000 euros to be invested for the rig, the cameras, the software to process it, and the sound, the binaural sound that comes with it. But Jump, which is the latest device that is being made available by Google, now costs around $20,000 for a 12-camera rig. So it's very much a jungle. There's nothing that is really set. There's no rule, and it's all very much being invented. But the consensus is that within the next few years, and this may not be any further away than maybe 3 years, we will, all of us in this room, have sunglasses in our pockets, which will be the only device that we will use. We will not use phones anymore. We will have glasses that we can use as sunglasses. There will be an optical signal that will allow these glasses to go dark, and we will be able to watch and access any content, mobile, online, streamed live in 4K. And this will become the universal interface. So don't take virtual reality too lightly. I think we need to take it very seriously. The industry is investing massively in the cameras, in the rigs, in the headgears, and there was a study that was published just this morning, which I watched on the plane coming here, saying that despite what everybody thought in the first tests, market tests that have been published, people who want to watch VR content are not expecting that they will watch games first. The first thing they want to do is watch series, films, and in an immersive way. Star Wars has now announced the kind of content that they will make available in VR for the release of the next Star Wars film, and it's massive. There's a host of technological improvements that will make this technology become smoother, easier, lighter, with no friction, and very easy to use. So these kinds of glasses is something you will have in your pockets within the next, I would say, 2-3 years. But for the moment, there are still issues that are not solved. Stitching is one of them. I won't go into details, but solving the problem of connecting in a smooth 360-degree environment the images coming from 14 or more cameras is still a big issue. And in most films, you will see lines, you will see it's quite difficult. There are problems of distance. With most rigs, you cannot film closer than 1.30 meters to the camera unless you use fisheye lenses that create distortions on the side. I won't bore you with details, but the technical challenges of having a very clean 360-degree environment as a result of 14 or more cameras stitched together is still a big technological issue. The other technological challenge, which is not ready yet, is that right now the freedom that you have in watching content in virtual reality is restricted to actually deciding where you want to look 360 degree. But if you want to start walking towards an object and you're walking in real life and have you walk in the virtual environment, that doesn't happen. That is not possible for the moment. There are many prototypes, many different attempts at solving this, but it's not ready yet. I'd like to share with you just a funny one of those attempts. It's made for a game called Skyrim.
They call me Dovaki. And in this video, you will see me fighting against dragons, spiders, and other enemies in the game The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim.
So this is a prototype which you will see. It's not available, but it's one direction to show what I'm trying to say. So on the left you have him, and on the right you have him represented in the virtual reality game. Notice that he has two remote controls in his hands, like Wii or Kinect joysticks. His socks have magnetic patches on them that makes him on the sliding floor reproduce the movements he wants to have in the game. So in this prototype, you see that the attempt is to try and find ways to fully reproduce the movement in real life into the virtual world. So there are many other systems like this, but one of the most realistic experience with movement tracking is going to open in Salt Lake City in less than a year, and it's called The Void. It's a theme park. It's like a sort of a Disney park for virtual reality that you can experience 4 people at a time in the same space. I'd like to stop just on this one. Why play a game when you can live it? This is the whole virtual reality experience. This idea, once again, that in a virtual reality environment, you are no longer a spectator, you are a part of the action, you're a part of the experience. You are in it, you're not on the side of it, and that's what makes the big difference. I'm sorry that I'm showing very quickly just a few examples that seem very Hollywood, very big market, but it's very interesting to see that artists are now starting to appropriate this technology and this new platform to start writing more interesting, more author-driven, more authentically inspired stories. We don't have the time to go into this, but just know that immersive fiction is also something that is happening. This project, Doghouse, which you can look online, is a project done in Scandinavia, in Denmark, where you experience a dinner party, 5 people at the same time, and you are 5 people together in the same moment. It's a bit like Festen for virtual reality, where you are part of the action by being one of the guests. One of the more interesting questions that artists are looking into is, do we need to have a body or not when we're in virtual reality? If we are immersed, if we are present, and yet I cannot be present in the virtual world with my own body, with my own hands, with my own legs, then who am I? Who am I in this world? Should I have someone else's body? And in this case, who is this person that I am, me, free to do what I want, but not with my body? Or should I be just a godly presence with no physical representation? This is one of the most interesting questions in writing stories for virtual reality. Writing stories is also completely different, because you need to go into a new technique of writing, which I call spatial writing. And this is just a prototype of something I have been testing. I've given it up now because it doesn't fully work. Of how do you write a standard page of a script for VR when you know that you not only have to write the dialogues and describe the action, but what happens when there are different things happening all around you. So in this attempt, I placed the center of the ring is where you have the camera. The ring itself is the inside, in this case, of a van, in which there are 6 characters. I describe where they are. There's always, even though we are able to look around us in VR, there's always a front. You always have to decide where is the front, where's the cardinal direction that you find when you're looking ahead. So, and the white space around is the outside, what you see through the windows. The blue ring could be an apartment, it could be a plane, it could be a car, anything inside. But what's interesting is that in writing for VR, you have to write by making directing decisions. For instance, you have to decide where is your camera, because that's where the subjective point of view is going to be. Directing actors is completely different. You as the director cannot be on set, because if you see the camera, the cameras see you. So you have to be outside. There is a technology on the latest filming that I did. I was able to test a prototype where I was able to wear the gear, the headgear of VR, and I was able to watch live what the cameras were filming. So I was able, by looking around, to coordinate and see what the actors were doing. And this will be the standard thing. So you have to look with a live stitching of all your 14 cameras at the same time. You have to be able to look what they do, but you cannot direct them. So just like actors are alone on stage, on a theater, the same way in front of a virtual reality camera rig, they're alone and you have to be able to watch them. This is nearly resolved by live stitching and live transmitting into a headgear while you are filming. This is also just very quickly an indication of where virtual reality can be going as well, as a writing, designing tool. This is a video done with a Disney senior animator who now works with VR as a working tool. He designed the little
doorway to the imagination is open a little wider. The edges of the paper are no longer there. This is not a flat drawing. This is sculptural drawing. Making art in three-dimensional space is an entirely new way of thinking for any artist. What does this mean for storytelling?
There's also just one last word. I have to go very quickly, but you know that Facebook purchased Oculus Rift, a startup company, for over $2 billion about a year and a half ago in March 2014. The reason why they bought it and they started the whole virtual reality craze is because they want to move Facebook entirely to VR, and they have started. You can now access Facebook VR, social VR, by accessing a lounge, a virtual lounge. You can be 5 people at the same time, you can choose your avatar, and you can watch content together in this virtual lounge and comment and exchange live in this virtual social place. This will grow more and more. 2016, we're going to see more services available in virtual reality. The same way Samsung has promoted its own VR system to allow people who are separate, far away from each other, to meet again in a virtual common space. The first festivals have started. The first fully VR festival is called Kaleidoscope. It just happened in the States about a month ago only. And this is what it looks like when you're in a VR festival. So basically you can watch stuff together or separately. And that answers, excuse me, one of the main criticisms that is brought to VR is that it breaks the collective experience of cinema. Yes, it does. It's not a collective experience, at least not for the moment. But what about reading? Reading is a very solitary experience. It's something you do on your own. But the pleasure you have of sharing your impressions on a book with someone else that has read the same book are very vivid. They're very strong. To me, the VR experience equates more to reading a book than watching a film in a cinema. You should see the kinds of discussions that happen excuse me, between people after they have watched the same piece in VR. They're incredibly passionate because no one has seen the same thing. Someone was watching here while someone else was watching behind, and they didn't see the same thing, so they need to inform each other about what they saw. So just to finish, when is this happening? How soon can we start? Well, it's really now. Samsung has now, starting last week, made its gear available online, and they've done the very first ever advert for VR. So this is now part of our reality. The Samsung Gear is the first commercially available VR gear, but it only works with the Galaxy phones. So you need to spend, it costs 99 euros, but you need to spend another 700 euros if you don't have a Galaxy Samsung phone to work with it. But they're starting for Christmas, very soon Sony is going to launch, actually they just announced they're pushing it to February, but they're starting to launch the PlayStation VR, which only works with the PlayStation. HTC has partnered with Valve to make their gear available for the online game platform. And it's going, in 2016, everyone is launching. Oculus is going to start selling its first gear, but the problem that they have is that you are connected with wires to your computer, so as you turn around, you end up being, mixed up in the wires. So they've announced they're working on a wireless device. Apple, Google are going to launch their stuff. Game designers are all working on VR games, all of them. The Hollywood studios have all started a VR company. Kevin Spacey has announced last week that he was investing massively in a new VR startup. Steven Spielberg has announced he's doing nothing but VR. Everyone is working on major franchises in VR. Brands, advertising, fashion, sports, real estate, and of course porn are in it. So I guess my conclusion is that even though for the moment VR is positioned to be the next major industry move, billions are being invested in it, it is not too early for us as filmmakers, film producers, script writers who are looking for meaningful content to explore the tool, explore the technology, and understand the challenges that it represents. It's not so different to work in VR than working in traditional film. It's a new option. It's not going to kill cinema, at least not yet. But it's going to be massive. And my feeling is that if you don't look into it just out of curiosity, you're going to be lost in a couple of years. It has to be explored because it's going to be a major tsunami. So really, making art is about exploring and telling stories is irrelevant of the platforms. If you have a good story to tell, explore VR. You may be surprised with the potential that it offers you. Thank you very much.